What was the purpose of the War of the Worlds radio broadcast that Orson Welles conducted? It was to test our emotional maturity as to whether or not we could handle acculturation, being subsumed into another culture of differing values. And we couldn't handle it. We got all excited and thought we were at war, and so we got just that. And that was the only way to inaugurate the acculturation of the world that we have today into the world that we had then, that we could not have handled otherwise had it not been for World War II, the trauma of World War II. So we've had our war, we've had our acculturation, and the War of the Worlds radio broadcast has fulfilled its expectations, namely our reaction. We became frightened. Now it's a part of our life, and we don't even think about it. It came on the heels of Tesla's Pierce-Arrow demonstration in 1931. And the FCC came on the heels of that demonstration as well, to prevent it from ever happening ever again. So there's a lot of coincidences. The Amman brothers didn't go far enough. Tesla went a little bit further, but he was stopped from going any further. The Nazis took it further because Tesla gave them all of his technology. And then we inherited, well, not we, not you and I, but vested interests, shall we say, inherited the Nazi technology, and now it's being woven into the fabric of our society without us even noticing, and that's the plan, that we not notice, because they know it'll shake us to the core if we start demanding free energy, because that's the only way a UFO can operate, is on the basis of a tremendous amount of energy that is no limit. You know, you can have any amount you want, and so of course you're going to levitate. You're going to do whatever you care to do when you have that much energy to work with. You know, it's a minor detail to sink that to create so much of energy that you have to sink it into a magnetizable sink, but you don't use iron. The catch is you use aluminum, and then the thing levitates. But you have to have a tremendous amount of energy to do it, and it has to be solid state. And the simulations that I've been performing at is.gd/mywiki, and you can download the zip file at is.gd/evjerk, as in Edward Victoria Jacob Edward Robert Kitchen. My simulations validate to me that you don't have to make a motor out of it to create brute force, such as what Tesla had taught Werner von Braun between the years of 1936 and 1938 in New Mexico, and what was implemented in some of their electro U-boats, namely brute force, because the excess energy was not sunk into a paramagnetic material such as aluminum, but into a ferromagnetic material such as the iron hull of the U-boat. And that kept it submerged. It prevented it from floating out of the water up into the sky. But they did do other UFO technologies, and they had to base their craft on aluminum to make it work. See, William Loyne did the best he could speculating based on the information he had at hand, and he's given us several good hints. For every 200 pounds of iron added to his special generator, Tesla claimed 1 horsepower output was added to its output, was increased by 1 horsepower. So with a several ton warship, you got a lot of energy. But you have to, because you're using brute force. Now when you switch to aluminum, inertia is neutralized, and you don't have to use brute force anymore to move the thing around. You'd probably think a thought to move it forward or backward, and your thought energy alone would be enough to move it around. And this would apply for a submersible if you had it equally balanced so that it neither rose nor fell in the water, constructed just right. Not purely of aluminum, but, well, yeah, purely of aluminum, and then you add some ballast. Let's say sand. They had sandbags on the sides of balloons for a reason. So you put a little ballast in your aluminum craft to make sure, lead, to make sure that it stays submerged underwater, and doesn't rise or fall, and then just the slightest thought would be enough to move it up or down or forwards or backwards, because you've got your free energy device sinking all of its excess electrical energy into its aluminum mass. This is the problem Marvin Cole had and freaked him out, and he left LA, took his girlfriend and all the documentation, and left behind the motors and the motor designs that he had built, because it was starting to levitate. And Richard Hackenberger didn't know what sense to make of it, even less did E.V. Gray. But Richard Hackenberger did bring aluminum back because he had to neutralize the radio interference that he was producing in the environment, because they had a second raid from the FCC. But he didn't bring it back all the way because he didn't understand the full extent of what Marvin Cole had bumped into, quite by unhappy circumstance, according from his point of view. So it's already been done before. Tesla did it. Marvin Cole was on the brink of doing it. And the Joe Cell does it in its own way. But Tesla Motors is already doing it. And, you know, they've got an aluminum body, and they've got conventional battery pack tied to their system so that nobody suspects anything is going on. But it has the range that it has, and it has, more importantly, the acceleration that it has, because of various items of interest that I've discovered, to improve its performance within certain acceptable limits. And very gradually, over time, those limits will be breached and changed, you know, and the technology that they have will be incorporated into our vehicles, and then we'll have it. But it's done very gradually so that no one demands overnight free energy, because that would collapse the economy, the banking system would go belly up, and yada yada. You know, our whole way of life would not be able to withstand the shock of such a overnight alteration of of how we go about doing our business. We just couldn't handle it. So this is what I've discovered, and yet what can I do with it? You know, I can tell you about it, but the few of you who listen to this and can comprehend what's being said, or agree with me for that matter. Oh, Vinny's nuts. Be that as it may, microcap is no joke. And the fact that it's the industry standard, that it's used at Manitoba University Electrical Engineering Department by their students when they do their lab work, it's no joke. Microcap is a very solid thing. I cannot do surges except for this type of circuit, because it's so well grounded. Now, there are times that I will get warnings that I have to ground various components because they're getting over voltage, but most of the time I have been able to steer clear of that and succeed in creating an infinite gain of a surge, because the circuit is so simple and because it's so well designed by its nature. Now, I can't claim entire credit for this. I can't at all. I only learned about this circuit by way of studying Joseph Newman's motor and simulating that in LT-Spice, which is another variety of spice. It's all spice. Okay, LT-Spice, microcap spice, it's still spice. The Berkeley software for, you know, electronic simulation. And then studying Joseph Newman's motor led me eventually to the shorted motor, you know, the motor that has an electrical short. All motors have a magnetic short, it's called the armature, but they don't have an electric short lest they spin out of control and have this humongous energy surge that fries them, that kills themselves. And this is what happened in the early days of AC motor and generators when Tesla had his private lab, because nobody knew how to build a motor that would not fry itself, while his motors worked fine, and his generators. And so Steinmetz was called in and hired by General Electric to break the Tesla patent on the AC motor and AC generator so that everybody else could benefit, not just Tesla and his company. I think it was Westinghouse. So Steinmetz figured it out. He mathematically modeled all the factors that go into an AC motor or AC generator design. You can look it up online. It's like a dozen different factors, and it covers the whole gamut of motor dynamics, or AC motor or AC generator dynamics. And if you follow all those little rules of thumb, you get yourself a motor that functions. Well, I broke some of those rules because I followed the Joseph Newman way of thinking, which was a different way of thinking. And also I was helped by studying what Thomas Comerford Martin and William Line has given us about Tesla's special generator. Between those two contributing factors and a little nudge from Byron Brubaker, I managed to accept and appreciate what I had stumbled on, and only now appreciate its full value as a solid-state device that neutralizes inertia. And once you neutralize inertia, it doesn't matter how you make yourself go forward or backwards or up or down, because the amount of energy required to make that happen is so nil. It's almost a detail of such technical banality that I couldn't care less. You know, who cares? You have to neutralize inertia. That's the main thing. And then it takes no energy or a great deal of prowess to take the next step, whatever that step might be, and cause this thing to move forward or backward. But there's no, or up or down, but there's no moving parts required. It's totally solid state. That's the beauty of the thing. And you don't need nuclear power to run the thing. In fact, you need just a little voltage from your environment, and the rest is history. We're dealing with something that literally changes time from the perspective of electricity. I'm not so sure, you know, it changes time for the people in the vicinity of the thing, but it changes time for electricity, so that electricity's framework for time changes. You know, if you take all the energy that's normally applied over a year and squeeze it into a fraction of a second, that's a tremendous amount of energy. But what if you get to keep doing that? Then you have to wonder, well, where'd you get the energy from? You got it from your future? Did you steal it from your past? You know, these are mind-boggling questions, but I don't think so. It's because people are groping in the dark. They don't even know what God is. They think infinity has nothing to do with God. It means just that. You take infinity away from infinity, and what are you left with? You're still left with infinity. You know, it's not a problem when you look at it from the standpoint of samadhi. And so people who don't have the personal experience of transcending and experiencing samadhi, they don't know what it's like to think in terms of free energy, and so their mind is warped, and literally because it's hamstrung. That sense of being warped, it's hamstrung in thinking within limitations, and that you have to get energy from A and move it to B in order for C to happen, when in reality you have all the energy you need right here and now wherever you are, and you just use that, because it's by its nature unfathomable. But we play a game. We delude ourselves into thinking that we're counting 1 unit of energy, 2 units of energies, when in reality we're counting infinities. Each infinity is a unit of energy. And so when we no longer impose strict boundaries on each unit of energy and realize we have infinity within each unit, no matter how small or how large the unit of measurement is, then we realize we've got infinite energy always at our disposal in time and space. It's our own delusion that hamstrings us, that warps our brain into thinking that there's nothing better in life than what you struggle for, when in reality there's no need to struggle. Technology can literally be taken to the level in which there is no struggle at all to maintain the body and, you know, carry on the business of life, so that we have all the free time in the world and the luxury and the leisure and the freedom, the liberty to pursue better things, you know, to grow for a change instead of maintaining the status quo. So this is a totally different parameter of society, in which you no longer try to maintain a comfort zone. You no longer try to earn the right to have a comfortable life, because instead you have a life that you endeavor to achieve that is anything but comfortable and anything but stable. The only stability is to be enlightened, to be anchored to God, and I can't claim that stability, but I know that's the only stability worth having, because everything else should change as quickly as possible to give us more fulfillment in the relative, of a relative nature, than we've already had already. And there's no limit to relative fulfillment. So why be sitting pretty on the way things are? Because we have no idea how much it could be altered to such a degree that it would give us even more fulfillment, and without limit of growth and development in the field of the relative. Even in the absolute, there's no limit. Either way you shake it, there's no limits, no matter how you shake it. So that's the premise of my little argument. I'm just using this as a tool, a vehicle, to promote the general idea. But the simulations fulfill what I expect to see. They're just a technical way, a savvy way of demonstrating that samadhi is real. As a personal experience, it can be experienced by our machines. They can experience it too. They can transcend and have infinite, unbounded awareness of themselves every time they want to surge to infinite gain. They're transcending. Unfortunately, it fries them if it's allowed to go too far. In our case, God was very nice enough to cause our system to shut down, do the opposite, so that we don't fry ourselves. And instead of having infinite energy, we experience infinite rest, and then we come out of that infinite rest with more relative energy than we had before. So it's a much more intelligent way to go about it, to experience it in the human physiology. But in our machines, we can regulate it. It's not that hard. We set up a clock timer with a duty cycle and a certain frequency to allow a surge to develop, and then we cut it off. And then we wait a certain length of time and allow it to rise again, and then we cut it off. And by periodically allowing a surge to occur for a very limited duration, we can keep the energy flowing in our device. In-house production of energy, sufficient for any need we could possibly want to use the energy for. We don't have to distribute it, we don't have to transmit it, and we don't have to receive it. You know, this whole idea of a grid, a power grid, is obsolete with this type of technology. It's obsolete. No need to plug in and get charged, get billed for your service when you create all the service you want right in-house.